What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast by the Action Network, presented to you by Bet365. My name is Michael Lieboff, and joining me for this, our first match week preview for the Premier League of the 2024-2025 season, are Sam Ingram of bettingexpert.com and BJ Cunningham, my colleague here at Action Network. And together, the three of us are going to go on a little handicapping journey through all 10 Premier League matches coming your way, starting Friday, August the 16th, and culminating on Monday with the Monday Night Football match between Leicester City and Tottenham. We'll also touch on some matches in the rest of Europe, in Italy and Spain, give out our three-leg underdog parlay, and our favorite bets for the first week of the Premier League. Sound good, guys? Let's get right into it. We're going to start on Sunday morning with the match between Chelsea and Manchester City. City pulled off the 4-peat, first team to do that. Now will look to become the first team to pull off the unprecedented 5-peat in the Premier League. They travel to Stamford Bridge. They travel as an odds-on favorite, minus 120-ish. We are recording this on Friday, August 9th. I'm on vacation next week, so we wanted to just get this out early. So just be aware of some of the numbers, and we'll try to direct you as best we can to some thresholds. But yeah, City's minus 120-ish right now. Chelsea plus 333 at Bet365 as a home underdog. The draw is plus 260. I see a lot of similarities in terms of the way I want to approach Chelsea to Manchester United at this point in the season. Like, there's so much chaos and variance and volatility with these teams, but there also is a ton of talent. So when they are underdogs, they're going to be much more attractive to me, even against a team like City. They're getting them at home. I'm going to go for it here, Sam. I know you're going to be on the other side, so I wanted to start with you. This is a funny situation where you got a team that has just been all turnover, all chaos, and then a picture of stability in Manchester City. But I'm hoping we catch City, in a cliche slow starting spot, and Chelsea's up for it here. I think the upside's good enough to back them on this three-way money line as a home pooch. But you can tell me why I'm wrong.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this one, Michael. I've got no idea who's going to start for Chelsea. Like, every time I open Twitter, they've signed a new player for like 20 million that I've never heard of. So that should be a bit of fun this season. I actually saw just before coming onto the podcast that Pedro Neto to Chelsea, I think that's about done, £60 million. And although, like, I jest about their transfer activity, like, I love that signing. Like, when he is injury free, and I suppose that's the big thing, he's one of the best attacking players in the league, with better players around him, the likes of Nkunku and the like. He should prove to be a really good addition. So that's one I'm excited by for sure. Thinking back to this fixture last season, I actually think I bet on Manchester City in some capacity, both home and away. I was left a little red-faced. I think it was 1-1 and 4-4 in the end. So this Chelsea team turned on against Manchester City last term in a season of ups and downs for them. And looking at the prices, again, like those two matches, my first reaction was, yeah, I've got to bet City on the nose. Like, we know more about City. We know what to expect. Pep will have them up for this, and they'll want to make the best start possible in the hope of defending their Premier League crown for the fifth time on the bounce, which is just crackers in itself. I have question marks over Maresca. He's got one championship season under his belt. We spoke about it on the season preview pod. His squad was that good that I'm not sure he really needed to do too much with that squad to get promoted. He clearly had an impact. You could see that in the style of play, yes, but he certainly had the tools at his disposal to bounce straight back up to the top flight, and anything but promotion would have been a bit of a disaster down there for Leicester. So from that to Chelsea, we know what Chelsea is like behind the scenes. It's just a gigantic step up. And at the prices, knowing more about this Manchester City than we do about the current Chelsea setup, I just have to side with City. And for 100% transparency, this is not a bet I'm going to take. But if I had to put up a bet for this show, I would definitely be leaning more towards Pep and City than I would be towards Maresca's Chelsea.
Yeah, I think it's much more a situational thing for me than anything else. Like, Chelsea is a team that I'm going to stay so far away from when they're big favorites, when the situation is a little more dicey. But at this price, I'm just hoping to catch City here, BJ. Like I said, I think this is like similar to Manchester United, a team that they've obviously got all the talent that you can hope for when you're getting them as an underdog, and they could basically beat any team on the planet. But they can also, lose to Ipswich pretty easily too, because of the chaos and just the lack of cohesion. So Chelsea for me here, probably going to be one of a few Chelsea bets all season. But out of the gates, I'm on the Blues.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing about this match, so these two, we don't like to take a lot away from preseason because players aren't just going as hard or whatever. City did beat Chelsea in the United States 4-2, and it was a big time thrashing. And what kind of happened in that match, which is the concern under Maresca, is, he was an assistant manager at City under Pep for an entire season. So he plays a very similar style to what Pep does, where it's like, no, we need to build out of the back. We need to do a lot of short passes. And what that does is it obviously raises your ceiling, right? But it also lowers your floor. And as you've seen in preseason, both against Celtic and against Manchester City, is they kept turning the ball over when they tried to build out of the back. So that's a big time worry here for Chelsea. And if you go back to last season, why they were successful against City, and more importantly, why Chelsea was actually successful against a lot of the top teams and why they were bad against the lower end of the table, is because they're just a way better team playing in transition. Like, were really good playing under Pochettino in that low defensive block in City and then just hitting them in transition. They did it multiple times. It's why they drew them 1-1 at the Etihad. That's why they played them really, really solidly in the FA Cup. I believe it was the semifinal or quarterfinals. I can't really remember. But remember that it was a 1-0 game and City created next to nothing and got a goal in the 83rd minute. So now that they're under Maresca, if they're going to continue to try to build out of the back like that, that's not going to work here against Manchester City. So if they decide to go back to what they did and what they did successfully against City last year, like, yes, I love their chances as an underdog here, but I'm not really sure they're going to do that under Maresca. Out of possession, Chelsea is going to be very, very aggressive with their pressing, which against City is not the best method to go about. So for me, I'm passing. I kind of want to just see what it looks like under Maresca. I did project City at -113, so I'm pretty in line with the market here. So for me, I'm just going to sit this one out, and I kind of want to see what it looks like under Maresca. I think there'll be a couple of good opportunities here, Michael, where, third match of the season, Chelsea's going to host Crystal Palace, and they're going to go to Bournemouth. So those are going to be your two really good opportunities to fade them. So I'm going to sit back and see what it looks like under Maresca here in this first match.
All right, so that's the Sunday 11:30 a.m. kickoff. Let's bounce back to Friday, the season opener, the curtain raiser. We had a little bit of disagreement on City and Chelsea, but I think we're all going to be in lockstep here as Manchester United take on Fulham. United is a -188 home favorite. The Cottagers traveling at 5-1 at the time of recording, and the draw is +333. Of course, these odds are from Bet365. I mean, we can basically we should have just clipped what our conversations. I'm sure, Sam, you had a similar conversation about United and Wolves in their season opener last year, and we could have just copied it over to this one because I feel like it's very similar. I've got no idea what to expect out of Manchester United. All I know is that I can tell you that come Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern time or 11 p.m. over there in England, everyone's just going to be talking about what they saw, and it's just going to be driving people up a wall. We're going to be discussing whether Ten Hag is going to last, how long he's going to last into the season, all this stuff. I think the most shocking result of this from this match would be if United just come out and are just like a comprehensive, 2-0, take care of business winner. And that makes them very dangerous to back here as a favorite. So I'm going with Fulham. I'm going to take a shot as well to start with the money line. I mean, that game against Wolves, we talked about it all season, and it was their first match of the year on that Monday Night Football, where Wolves were so much better than United and ended up not winning. But I can see a similar situation here where we're just left really pissed off that what was the right bet doesn't cash, BJ. But we say it all the time with United. I would love to meet the person that is like excited to bet them at this price.
Yeah. So, if you haven't listened to our preview pod, please go listen to that. I went through a whole rant about Manchester United and Ten Hag, so I'm not going to expound that here once again. But the one thing I want to say is just how bad Manchester United were defensively. And they could be a little limited coming in here as well. We have a lot of center backs questionable, specifically Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, even Johnny Evans is questionable with an illness now. It looks like Lisandro Martinez is going to play. So United, and obviously Lenny Yoro, the new signing, is also going to be out for a couple months. So there's who's actually going to start back there? Is it going to be Victor Lindelof? I'm not really sure. But the one thing I want to point out is, Fulham specifically last season. I know Paulinia's gone, and it's obviously a huge loss. There's really no sugarcoating that. But Fulham, towards the end of last season, really started to become a very good defensive team defending in a low block. From March 1st until the end of the season, they allowed 1.46 non-penalty expected goals per 90 minutes, which I know sounds like a lot, but it was actually 7th best in the Premier League because the Premier League has turned into the Bundesliga, and every match is averaging 3 to 3.5 expected goals. United, over that exact same time frame, allowed 2.17 non-penalty expected goals per 90 minutes. They were horrible defensively. And if you remember last year, Fulham beat Manchester United at Old Trafford because they got into a basketball match. So if Luke Shaw and all these other center backs are not going to be available, who's to say Ten Hag, who I mentioned on the preview pod, is an extremist when it comes to tactics? Who's to say he doesn't just abandon the buildup and say, you know what, let's just go play back and forth with Fulham and see what happens. If they do that, that's not going to work because Fulham's a pretty good transition team and they have a lot of good transition attackers that can cause United a lot of problems. Xerxes probably going to start up top would be my guess because Højlund is out. Xerxes, for those who don't know, at Bologna is a really good deep-lying playmaker. He's really good at connecting build-up play. He's not a great finisher. That's his biggest flaw right now. And what United need is a really good finisher because last season they only averaged 1.34 non-penalty expected goals per 90 minutes, and it actually created the fewest big scoring chances of anybody. They're too reliant on Bruno Fernandes to just create everything for them. They just don't have anybody else that really creates that much. So, over the 2 meetings with Fulham last season, in total, expected goals was 2.4 to 2.2 in favor of United. It was very even matches for both of them. So who's to say that United should be laying a full goal here at home, especially what we've seen under Ten Hag? Again, we are recording this before the Community Shield. We'll see what they look like against City. Honestly, whatever happens in that match, I don't think there's really much to take away because it's a completely different opponent. But United last season, on only 5 instances, they created more than one expected goal than their opponent. 5 times. That was it for the entire season. So why should they be laying a full goal against a solid defensive team? I don't understand it. I think that they should be closer. I've projected minus 130. I think it should be closer to that. So I like them +1 at +105.
You're right there with us, Sam.
Yeah, I'm just going to carry on with that theme, I think. Looking at the prices on mid-June this summer, Fulham's price was +400 on Bet365. Since then, steadily increased to +500, despite United missing Højlund for the opening weeks. Lenny Yoro's out. Erik ten Hag is very much in. I know we're all quite down on United. We mentioned it in the season preview pod. Recruitment feels similar. Ten Hag still there despite underperformance, etc. And we haven't really seen much change over the summer, but maybe that's to be expected. Maybe we should expect this to be like a process of building and progression over years instead of over a summer from the new ownership regime that's come in. In terms of the opening game of the campaign, with maybe not too much change from last season, Fulham at +500, it just feels too big. And I know, I actually thought you guys were going to be on the Fulham straight win. That felt like something you'd do. But I'm very much with you on the Fulham +1 handicap. See, last season, if you're looking at the numbers, Manchester United had fewer Asian handicap wins than any team in the Premier League, with 17.25 wins from 38 games. If you look at Fulham, away from home, they won 9.75 Asian handicaps from 19 away games. So they're pretty handy in this market. And with it being the first game of the season, like, the pressure for me is already on Erik ten Hag. There are question marks whether he should still be in the dugout, whether he should be in charge of Manchester United for the opening game. So the pressure is there. And with absentees in United's camp, maybe this won't be as straightforward as the odds suggest. Looking at Fulham, they are without Paulinho, which is such a big blow. He registered 103 tackles from dribbles last season. The next best had 62. Paulinho made the most tackles in the league with 152. He broke up a lot of plays in a Fulham shirt last season, and from that, possession returned to Fulham, and they could play in advance from there. So his absence is not to be understated. They need a replacement, and they need one quickly. So that's a concern. That's a red flag, which doesn't help, obviously, the Fulham +1 Asian handicap price. But just looking at Fulham going forward in the Premier League this season, what I am confident of is Marco Silva's ability as a coach to improve his players. If you look at Mitrovic, look at Paulinho, they've come in as £20 million signings, and they've left having performed minor miracles in that squad. So I don't think that's a coincidence, and I expect them to recruit well. And when they do, they have the money. And when they do, I think Marco Silva will be able to bring said players on, and Fulham can have another good go at the Premier League this season. But in terms of the opening game, I just think that United price is too short, and I feel much more comfortable taking Fulham +1 than I ever would taking Manchester United -1 Asian handicap at home at Old Trafford, which just shows the regression of Manchester United in the past decade. Because for you to say, Michael, at the start of all of this, the biggest surprise would be for United to run out comfortable winners at Old Trafford on the opening day. For you to even say that, it just shows that this United side is, a million miles away from Fergie and the like. So, back in Fulham opening day.
It's almost like, as we saw this last year, like Old Trafford became a situation where it was like almost a home field disadvantage for them because of the atmosphere was just so toxic. And I know that they ended up winning 10 out of 19, but they lost 6 as well. So,
and how many of those should they have lost?
Yeah, exactly. It was it became a cauldron. But so that's all three of us on Fulham in one way or another. Let's move to the Saturday early kickoff, lunchtime over there in England. Ipswich makes their return to the Premier League against Liverpool, where Arne Slot will make his debut, taking over for Jurgen Klopp. Ipswich, as you'd imagine, a big favorite. Pretty big underdog at 6-1 on the money line. Liverpool laying -275. The draw here is +425. I think the prices are too wide for me to be all that interested in Liverpool, but it's hard to see this one going swimmingly for Ipswich here. I get that there's a little bit of uncertainty with Slot coming in, but the players are still miles better than what Ipswich is going to be able to throw. It should be a fun atmosphere with their return, but I would maybe look to back some alternate overs. I could see this thing being like a 4-2 goal fest, a lot of fun where there's maybe it's 1-1 early on, and then Liverpool pull away with and their talent takes over. So something like that is appealing to me, BJ. But for right now, I'm going to pass.
Yeah. Again, if you listen to my preview pod, our preview pod, I went extensively through Ipswich and what Kieran McKenna likes to do. He's somebody that traditionally wants to build out of the back, try and control matches. That's a really bad thing to do against Liverpool. And what Arne Slot is going to come in and do is keep the same principles out of possession of what Klopp did. They're going to press high in a man-to-man fashion, and they're going to cause a lot of problems. And the biggest thing when you face teams like Liverpool and Newcastle, for a team that wants to build out of the back, or even is that, okay, if you're not able to play through the pressure, well, then you're going to turn it over and you're going to create a lot of easy transition opportunities for Liverpool. The other end of the spectrum is, okay, we'll just play the ball long. Well, getting into transitional battle with this Liverpool team is like a death sentence for anybody in the bottom half of the table. So I'm not really sure what Ipswich is going to be able to do in possession to actually give Liverpool any sort of problems. In possession, you'll see Liverpool try to control a lot more. Arne Slot's a big believer in 3-man combinations, getting 3v2s in build-up, which they should be able to do here against Ipswich. He likes this staggered build-up, which is kind of interesting. Of what he did at Feyenoord is that, the double pivot, one stays high, one stays low. So it gives them opportunities that, if you want to press high, like we're going to have a numerical advantage if we want to send it long. So it kind of makes it very difficult for teams to press. Ipswich was a high pressing, very aggressive team in the Championship. There were times when they sat back and didn't, press as high and tried to stay in more of a mid block. My more question mark with Ipswich is like they held 53% possession. And again, they tried to be a possession dominant team. How are you going to cope in the Premier League? Not just holding less than 50% of the ball, but less than 40% of the ball. Are you going to be able to play successfully the way that Brentford has done over the years, the way that all these teams in the bottom of the table, like Nottingham Forest, Wolves, etc., where you're only playing in transition, you're defending in a low block for a majority of the match? I mentioned in the preview pod, Ipswich was 12th in final third of box entry conversion rate. They were very average in terms of defending their penalty area, in terms of blocking shots and defending crosses. So that is a big red flag for me, especially facing this Liverpool team, which was the best offensive team in the Premier League last season, 2.3 expected goals per 90 minutes. So I think in the opening match here that Liverpool is actually a little bit undervalued. So I like them -1.5 at +105, projected their spread at -1.7. So I think Ipswich is in for a rude awakening here, and I'm not really sure that they have a method, given the talent level, the low talent level they have comparatively to Liverpool, to actually cause them any problems in possession. So I like Liverpool -1.5.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a cliche about these newly promoted teams that people expect them just to like come out firing. Maybe it's a Liverpool to win from behind, Sam, because we've seen Liverpool, at least under Klopp, like they would, and last year especially, giving up goals in those first 10, 15 minutes and then finding their way back in. But I think that for me, it's about trying to find a creative way in to back Liverpool in goals here.
So this is one of the most intriguing matchups in the Premier League this weekend for me. I know it's an early kickoff for you guys in the States, but I think it might be worth it. So set your alarms and get a coffee on. Liverpool, really short here at -278. I don't think anyone will take that on. Maybe they deserve to be that short. There's a golfing class and quality here, but this is a newly promoted club back in the Premier League after a long time. And I know it's cliche, Michael just mentioned it, but I'm fully buying into it. Portman Road will be rocking. And this is a club that's used to winning. They've just secured back-to-back promotions, and their Portman Road form is a big factor in that. Looking back last season, no team scored more goals at home in the Championship than Ipswich Town. Last campaign, they registered 59 goals in 23 home games, averaging 2.56 goals scored per 90. Now, if you go back to League One, even further, where Plymouth Argyle pipped them to become champions that season, had to get that in. Ipswich scored 60 goals in 23 games, which was a 2.60 goals per 90 average. So that's huge at any level. Yes, they're stepping up to the Premier League. The leg up is huge, but you should still expect this team to score goals like Luton Town did last season when they were promoted after a long time in the English Football League. Ipswich may well fall short against Liverpool. They might fall short against a lot of Premier League sides, but expect them to ruffle a few feathers this season. We don't really know what we're going to get from Liverpool, but the comparative strength, as BJ spoke about in their squad, makes them heavy favourites. And you can get them on side by adding both teams to score to the Liverpool win. So we can go from -278 all the way to +170. And last season, if you're looking at Liverpool figures, 14 out of 19 Liverpool away games saw both teams to score. That's 79% of their matches. That was the third highest total in the league, behind Luton and then Chelsea, who were just bonkers all season. So I think Ipswich have a goal in them here, and hopefully Liverpool can fulfill their end of the bargain and start this Arne Slot reign off in style.
Yeah, that makes sense. That one. I'll probably join you on that. Let's go to Arsenal and Wolverhampton next. PJ's Arsenal, a massive -450 home favorite against Wolves. Gary O'Neill and Wolves traveling at 14-1. The draw here is +525. As we talked about in the Chelsea section, Pedro Neto looks to be on the move out of the Black Country and into Chelsea. We started to really get behind this Wolves team in the beginning, like the middle of the first third of last season. We loved Gary O'Neill, loved what he was doing. He's someone who's really good at just getting the most out of a squad. I'm starting to get a little worried now. I've been thinking about it more, like that they're going to be in a bit of a scrap here. This looks about right to me, BJ. I don't see Wolverhampton getting on the board against this Arsenal team that I think their best quality is just that they are so well drilled and know how to control matches. We talked about Argentina over the summer a lot, being the best team at just keeping matches on their terms. Arsenal on a club level are just experts at that, and that makes it really hard to see Wolverhampton getting what they need to pull the upset and just even making this one more than a snoozer.
Yeah, the thing about what Arsenal does is they don't just control games in possession, they control games out of possession. And the way that they do that is with their high press. They're so good at defending in transition with the likes of Declan Rice, stopping the ball. And quite frankly, Arsenal plays essentially 4 center backs across their back line. So it's very, very difficult to not only play through their back line, but to win headers against them, to win balls off of set pieces. It's just so difficult for underdogs to really do anything against Arsenal's defense. I mentioned it on the preview pod, but only in 5 matches last season did one of Arsenal's opponents create over 1 expected goal against them. Wolves, over the course of 2 matches against Arsenal last year, only created 1 expected goal total in those 2 matches. What Wolves is going to be without this match is Matheus Cunha, who is injured. And like you mentioned, Michael Pedro Neto is on the move. They brought in Jorgen Strand Larsen from Celta Vigo, who had good numbers in La Liga last year, scored double-digit goals, 0.46 XG per 90 minutes. But my question marks with him is like making the transition from La Liga and playing a lot of passive low-block teams to suddenly facing the best out-of-possession team, quite frankly, in the entire world. So I really struggle to see how Wolves actually creates a lot of chances here. Last season, they were dead last in the Premier League in final third to box entry conversion rate, which if you're a team that's primarily transition based and doesn't really get a lot of final third entries comparatively to some of the teams at the top half of the table, that isn't a huge red flag if you can't get those transition opportunities into the penalty area. While as Arsenal was the best defensive team in that category last year. I mentioned on the preview pod, Arsenal only allowed 0.73 expected goals per 90 minutes. So I like both teams to score no at minus 130. There's obviously question marks surrounding Arsenal and their ability to score from open play. And those really, those questions aren't going to be answered until we get into this season because it's the exact same attacking core. And Wolves, what we know about them under Gary O'Neill is they're the best penalty box defending team in the Premier League. The biggest question mark for Wolves, though, Max Kilman, their captain, probably I would argue their most important player last year, has made a move to West Ham. So, and they didn't really make any replacements. I know they signed Santi Bueno last year to be kind of his replacement when he eventually left. So, but again, best team in the Premier League in terms of blocking shots and defending crosses. And they're a very, very good team defending set pieces, which is very, very crucial when you're facing Arsenal, who scored the most goals off of set pieces. So I think this is going to be one of your typical Arsenal low-scoring matches, probably a 1 or 2-0 win. But I really just don't see how Wolves is able to create anything of value. So I like both teams to score no at minus 130.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I feel like the argument you're making for Wolves to have anything here, Sam, is like, oh, it's the volatility of its match week 1. And when you're doing that, you're starting to grasp a little bit at straws. So that said, it doesn't feel like one that's going to just go off the rails. And I think that leads into what you're about to explain with your bet, which is at least Wolves keeping it tidy.
Yeah, this is more of a lean than anything. Just looking at the prices, and Wolves at around 14, 15 to 1 on the opening day of the season, it just feels massive. The Arsenal -2 Asian handicap didn't win in either home or away fixtures last season. The 2-1 at the Emirates saw Wolves cover the +2, and the 2-0 Arsenal win at Molineux obviously saw a return on your stakes. And if there's any game of the season where you might find teams a little undercooked, it's cliche, but it is match day 1 or it's after a big Champions League game under the lights. Betting a +2 Asian handicap on Arsenal opponents wouldn't have lost in their opening 6 Premier League games last season. I expect Arsenal to win, but do I think it will be easy as Arsenal being a minus 526 shot or thereabouts? No, I don't. Wolves has bolstered the right-hand side of their 11. They've brought Rodrigo Gomez in from Braga, and at right back, Pedro Lima. I'm not sure if Lima's going to start. As BJ said, they got Jurgen Strand Larsen in as well up top. And in pre-season, actually, it looks like Wolves are attempting to play differing variations of a 4-4-2 with the idea of winning possession back high up the field and in turn exploiting that. It looks a bit similar to Iraola's Bournemouth, actually, in that respect. So I don't expect them to do that here, because if they do, they're probably going to be in some trouble. But what I've got from that is I think Gary O'Neill has really been drilling what to do in and out of possession over the summer, and they've looked pretty good. So I think he'll have a plan here. He's a really good Premier League coach. I trust him. What I'm after here, and you mentioned it, Michael, is just for Wolves to stay in the game for as long as possible. And hopefully Arsenal don't win by a 3-goal, what's the word? Margin, there we go. A 3-goal margin. And we can take something from this game. But it was very much a lean. I just wanted to really highlight how big Wolves are on the opening day, because I'm not sure I can buy into that price.
Watch this match carefully, because Wolves travels to Chelsea next week for match week 2, which could be a very, very interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say, I think the best possible situation from that standpoint would be that, and not to lose Sam's bet, but like Arsenal just pummel them, and then you're getting Wolves at even at a big price against Chelsea.
Exactly. I was surprised, Michael, you're down on 15-1 here.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
So I was kind of surprised.
I'm so sick of betting against Arsenal. Like, I feel like every week last week I just got into it, and I was like, the price is just too wide. That they have trouble. I feel like they should, as a profile, their team should be one that has trouble running away from teams, but they just kept doing it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure come Saturday morning I won't be able to help myself, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Everton, they're up next.
Oh,
they're home. Yeah, this is. What a fun match, and to be spit out on match week 1, considering the new manager at Brighton. I can't pick a better manager for him to go up against than Sean Dyche. So we're going to have Brighton playing basically positionless soccer, no central midfielders, a 5-5-1, whatever the hell they're bringing in from St. Pauli, going against Sean Dyche, who's going to give you 4-4-2, hoof it long, try to win on set pieces and defend and work like hell. You could have set these odds in a million different ways, and I'd be like, probably makes sense. Because I think this is such a hard one to just pick a winner. Like, Everton's plus 150, Brighton's plus 187 on the road, the draw is plus 240. I've got no idea what to expect from... I have a pretty good idea of what to expect from Everton in terms of just like effort, industry, etc. No idea what to expect from Brighton here, BJ. And the prices just aren't good enough in that situation to play it anyway. Obviously, be rooting for Everton. I get off the marks. I feel like they lose every season opener, but I say that about all my teams. But I this is one I would love to hear the person who has conviction on either side of this.
Yeah. So my thing. Well, first off, before I get anything, Brighton hires Fabian Herzler, 31-year-old American, which makes me feel like I'm doing nothing with my life talking on this stupid podcast, because I'm guessing we're all around the same age. I'm 32, so that made me feel great when they signed him. But innovative is what I would call him, and one that I think, similar to Iraola last year, might take some time under Brighton. But I want to get in the camp right now that I'm all the way in on this guy. I think that he is a really, really good manager. You mentioned it, Michael. In possession, it's very weird.
They just abandon the midfield.
They abandon the midfield. The center back goes in as the single pivot, and they form a diamond with the goalkeeper, the 2 wide center backs, and then your center back that's inverted. And the reason they do that is because they think they can get a 4v3 against anybody who decides to press them. And then they'll have, they basically force the outside wingers to make a decision whether they come in and press. And if they do, then they have, open space out wide to play it out there. It's very innovative, and I think it's something that could work in the Premier League, especially with a team like Brighton that played under Zerbi and is very well drilled in this type of system. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time for it to actually be able to work. And going up against Sean Dyche's Everton is maybe not the best method. But I'll say this, Michael. The out-of-possession stuff from St. Pauli under Herzler looks a lot like Sean Dyche's Everton. It's 5-4-1 mid-block, deny space through the middle, utilize that mid-block to create high turnovers and everything. It looks very, very similar. The problem is that, Brighton under De Zerbi was a very aggressive, high-pressing, man-to-man style team. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to well-drill that mid to high defensive block and actually have it working at a high level. So I was actually looking at potentially playing Everton here because I do think that the price on Everton is maybe a tad too low, but then you look at who isn't available for Everton, and we're going to have no Jared Braithwaite here, probably no James Garner, who is the key guy now that Onana has left. Like, he is the guy in the midfield that they need available. So not having essentially two of your most important players, and then Michael Keane also being questionable here, it's like, okay, who starts the center back for Everton? So for me, I think it's a pass, and I think it's let's just see how this Herzler system actually works out. Let's maybe not just dive. I'm ready to just dive deep into the cannonball into the deep end. But this first match against, Everton, who is a team of the podcast, obviously, and very divisive team in terms of our listeners, who we just last season, Sam, we just kept telling people, hey, bet on Everton, and they just kept losing in the most painful fashion possible. We're not there yet, people, but we will be there soon on Everton. But I think this is a good match to just, hey, let's just take a step back and let's just see what Herzler looks like at Brighton.
This is a baptism of fire into English football, isn't it? It doesn't really
it
get
is.
much more
Very much
English.
is.
It doesn't get much more English football than this for Fabian Herzler. It's two teams really that I'm like going into the season. I'm really not sure what we're going to get from either. For Brighton, it was a poor season last season. From their recent standards, focus strayed into European competition, and it usually does for a club punching above their weight like Brighton. That saw them concede more goals than they scored in the Premier League, and it also ensured a bottom half finish. So this time round with the new coach, I expect there to be green shoots in Brighton, but I'm also mindful that the improvement might take a little time. All my notes in front of me really echo what BJ was saying. We saw under Iraola, it took about 11 to 13 games for it to really click and us to really see the positive performances and results in that Bournemouth camp. So it could look very similar. The one thing I'm concerned of, especially in the opening stages of the season, this manager, 31 years old, he's managed 55 matches as St. Pauli manager in Germany. He was in that post for less than 2 years, and now he is a Premier League manager. Like Maresca, it's some jump. You can imagine like that imposter syndrome on the touchline next weekend might be ringing very, very loud up against Sean Dyche. Or alternatively, he takes to it like a duck to water, but we just don't know. And that's why this is one of those matches for me that just fits into that category on the opening day of, look, let's just sit back, see what we get from either team. And for me and for Michael, I'm sure, hope that Sean Dyche's footballing lesson is one that Fabian Herzler is going to remember for a very long time. We shall see. But in terms of betting, I'm going to sit this one out.
And one thing also I'll mention on Brighton is they have a lot of injuries coming into this. No Evan Ferguson, probably no João Pedro, no Enciso, no Estupiñán, no Solly March. So it's like, and I know Brighton, we talked about last year, has the most depth of any team in the Premier League. But and they just signed another winger that they didn't really need. But yeah, it's losing, especially João Pedro, who is your most productive attacker last year. It leaves them kind of vulnerable. Probably Danny Welbeck up top, which is, especially against Everton, might be your best bet in terms of winning headers. But yeah, it's a tough one to bet here in the opening.
Michael, I'm intrigued. What's your thoughts on Everton's business this summer in terms of incomes and outgoings? How do you feel it's going?
Jasper Lindstrom, I like him.
Yeah, I like Lindstrom. And I just it's so complicated because of the financial fair play stuff. So it's almost like you just can't even celebrate or get. It's such a weird situation to be in. Is what I'm saying is, but I think in terms of their situation, like they're making the best of a terrible spot they've been put in. Lindstrom, I'm happy that they're holding on to Branthwaite, at least for now, because I think he's their most important player going forward, and will be their most important player, next summer when they sell him for wherever 100 million. But this is Everton to me. Like they're going to be a team you want to bet on when in what should be on opening day when they're all healthy, everyone's there because the squad's going to be so thin. But as we just said, they're already missing guys. But yeah, it's such a complicated situation for them to be in.
Away to Tottenham week 2. That'll be an interesting game.
Yeah. I do think that they if they do get Tammy Abraham, I'd be pretty excited because
I'd be so excited. Well, I mean, you have Beto with.
I know, but I'm a little fearful that Calvert-Lewin will be.
I'm surprised we didn't do our yearly donation on Calvert-Lewin for Golden Boot.
Well, if he goes to Newcastle,
that's true.
Then all of a sudden he becomes very interesting in that market. But yeah, there'll be a mess. The one thing I'll say about Everton, my prediction is that there's going to be a time in come November when they're flying, and at the drop of a hat, next time we look up, they'll have lost 8 in a row, and we'll be like, "What on earth happened there?"
And we'll bet on them every one of those.
Yeah, exactly, and we'll all be bankrupted as a podcast along the way.
Yep.
So yeah, that's Everton and Brighton. Good Lord. The one thing I do hope for this match outside of an Everton win is that it just is lashing rain. And you want a real baptism by fire, just make it really rainy and windy. And
it is, I think, the most interesting match of the what would it be, 3 p.m. window in England and 10 a.m. window here in the United States.
No idea what to expect. Oh, but honestly, Sam, on that point, I think Lindstrom is a good anytime. I meant to mention this. He's a good anytime goal scorer option. I wonder what his price will be. We're recording this a little early, but if he's a big shot, I think that his set piece prowess looks pretty good. It looks like he's getting the full endorsement from Deitch. So as long as he's starting, I think he's going to be a good anytime goal scorer option.
Decore is questionable as well, so he might play. If Deitch goes with the 4-4-1-1 that he did a lot last season, where he used Decore as that box crashing striker type situation. If Lindstrom plays that, definitely.
Okay, let's move on to Newcastle and Southampton. I believe these are the two clubs, unless Bournemouth is a little bit further away from Newcastle, that are furthest away from each other in the Premier League this year. Newcastle minus 275 at home. Southampton traveling at 7-1 plus 420 on the draw. This looks like one-way traffic, Sam. I think that's Newcastle. We were endorsing them pretty heavily in our preseason pod as a team that could perhaps gate crash or stay with the big boys in the title race for at least most of the season. And I think that they're one, and you don't want to get too far down these narratives, but they're a team that I think will really want to get out of the gates hot here. And because they know that come mid-season when City finds their form and go on a run, or Arsenal as well, they need a hot start much more than Arsenal and City is what I'm trying to say. So I think they come out of the gates flying here. So I'm not going to try to touch the big price on Southampton. In fact, I'd look to go the other way.
You've been brushing up on your UK geography because I think that's bang on. The last time we spoke about UK geography, you said Glastonbury was in Scotland. So
yeah, I'm getting better. That's all you can. Every podcast, you want to just get a little bit better.
Absolutely. Nice to see you've had your head in some books over the summer. That's good. Look, this is likely going to follow on from what we spoke about in the season preview. All of us hot on Newcastle, all of us not so hot on Southampton's chances this season. I think Southampton will get caught out against the big teams and the better coaches. Newcastle will be all over this Southampton team like a rash. That back line won't get a second, with the crowd at St. James's Park as well, right on top of them. Russell Martin's teams historically, all the way back to MK Dons, then Swansea and now Southampton, they all look and feel very similar. Possession heavy, build from the back. That's why he got the gig at Southampton. If you look at Southampton's stats from the Championship last season, they had the most completed passes in the Championship. They had 2,100 more passes attempted than second highest Leicester City. And they also had the highest pass completion rate in the league with 87.7%. So that suggests to me that A lot of these passes are short, quite simple along the back line and punched into midfield just in front of them. It also shows how comfortable they are in doing so. They'll do that again in the Premier League. Russell Martin won't change. And here they come up against a Newcastle side on the opening day with a 10.3%, 10.36 PPDA, passes per defensive action, last season, which was the 7th best in the Premier League. Now with no Europe in their legs and full focus on the Premier League this season, expect that number to come down, especially at St. James's Park. So with that in mind, for me, all fingers point to Newcastle really making life hard for Southampton here, on top of the fact that their squad is much, much better than Southampton's. That's not the biggest claim. I know Southampton have dropped down a division and been forced to sell players along the way. In terms of approaching this from a betting perspective, I've tried to get Newcastle on side at home first game of the season. I really want to be behind them. And you can get Newcastle minus 0.5 first half Asian handicap at minus 121. So basically for Newcastle to win the first half. With the thought process of Newcastle being bang up for this first day of the season, pressing high and aggressively, I think their opponents could be caught out. So if they can do that in the first half, I think they might well find an opener, and they might well win the half. So yeah, I'm opting for Newcastle on the first half Asian line.
BJ, one-way traffic for you too, right?
Yeah, to borrow Sam's phrase from the Everton-Brighton match, this is a little bit of baptism by fire for Russell Martin, because if we go back to the opening game of last season, Newcastle faced Aston Villa at St. James Park, and Aston Villa, very similarly under Unai Emery, is a short pass, build out of the back type team, and they got absolutely destroyed. Top to bottom, I believe it was 5-1 was the final score, and really just didn't even look like even having a sniff of actually building through Newcastle's press, which if everybody's healthy and they're able to unleash it, I'd say outside of maybe Arsenal and Liverpool, it's the best press in terms of physicality and intensity in the Premier League. And like Sam said, with no Europe, they can continue to unleash it week after week after week. To echo what Sam said, I mean, Southampton's going to build it out of the back. 63% possession in the championship last season. Russell Martin has never managed above the championship. Last season, Southampton played one match against a Premier League club. It was against Liverpool in the FA Cup, and they got destroyed 3-0. At Liverpool. The other thing that's kind of concerning with Southampton, their goalkeeper, Gavin Benuzu, 2 years ago, if you remember, we talked about him a lot, Michael, because he was categorically and statistically the worst goalkeeper that's ever graced the Premier League. Minus 16.6 post-shot XG plus minus. And I think throughout that entire season, we just kept talking about, well, maybe he's due to regress at some point. Like, he can't be the worst goalkeeper ever. It actually turns out he was. And then if you look at his performance in the championship last season, minus 11.6 post-shot XG plus minus. So if he's in net, that's really concerning for Southampton. They probably should be starting a 34-year-old Alex McCarthy to at least give them just base-level average goalkeeper play. So with a bad goalkeeper trying to build out of the back against what would be one of the best pressing teams outside of Arsenal and Liverpool, this is a really, really bad spot for Southampton, one where I think they're just going to get absolutely demolished. So I like Newcastle minus 1.5, which you can get around even money at Bet365 right now. And you know what? How about Alexander Isak as well, anytime goal scorer? Because if they get those high turnovers, guess who they're getting the ball to for an easy shot? Isak. So those would be my two bets.
I wonder if Bazunu knows he's statistically the worst goalkeeper ever in the Premier League.
Seriously,
that must sting a bit.
2 years ago, minus 0.52 per 90. Literally letting in half a goal per 90 more than he should have. Like, that's insane. You can't. And yet, but I know they signed him from City, so they're just like, well, he's young. Like, we're just kind of sticking with him. But he's so bad. I mean, I don't know what to say other than just like, and this is what happened to Nottingham Forest last year too. They went through 3 different goalkeepers and couldn't find one that could even stop a shot. So, I mean, bad goalkeeper play, especially against, easy transition opportunities, is a really, really bad mixture.
Let's talk Forest. They're up next against Bournemouth. They are home plus 155. Bournemouth traveling to the City Ground at plus 170. The draw is plus 250. A lot of flowers tossed at the feet of Andoni Iraola and Bournemouth in our season preview episode. So I won't get too into it, but I like them here. I know Forest has been really good at home compared to their away form since they've bounced back to the Premier League. That showed last year their positive XG difference when they are at home. But I just want to get in on this Bournemouth team from the gates. Like I think that I trust them as the better team here. I know they're on the road, but it's match week 1, and I think that they come out flying. The Solanke news, obviously worth monitoring, but I don't think it's going to keep me off here. And at worst, we'll see our price drift a little bit. And you can maybe buy Bournemouth at a bigger number as we get closer to kick if he does depart or they sit him out because he's imminently leaving. So I'm going to be on the cherries here. Anything for you on Forest and Bournemouth, Sam?
I had Bournemouth down originally, but then I saw the news on Solanke, and it looks like he will be going very soon. I don't think he'll be playing the opening.
It currently is official.
It is official. Okay. And I also read that Marcus Sensei has hired a new agent, and he wants to hold talks about his future. And look, I said in the season preview, I trust the owners to reinvest and recruit well. They're ambitious. We saw that with Iraola coming in and Gary O'Neill vacating. I know there was a lot of to do about that. Like, how can you get rid of Gary O'Neill? He's such a impressive young coach, and look, it's worked. So no, I do trust them to some extent. The owners, they've given me no reason not to. And this happens when you're a smaller team with a progressive coach and you hit heights that weren't expected. In terms of this fixture, they'll head to Nottingham Forest without Dom Solanke, without Enes Unal, I think that's how you say it, who is working his way back from a foot operation. And it looks like they might have to play, if they're going to go with an actual centre forward, Daniel Jebison, who arrived on a free transfer this summer from Sheffield United. He does look promising. I've seen him a few times. 21 years old, one for the future. It'll either be him or Antoine Semenyo up top, who can fill in and do a job up there. He's done it a number of times. I'm really hot on Bournemouth at the minute, but I just don't want to take them on personally until maybe they've got a few players in, or the squad's kind of settled down a little bit, or Iraola's got his targets in. This is going to annoy me if the opening day kind of pans out to be a Bournemouth 3-0 win. But I just think there's enough there for me to want to sit out. Forest at the City ground. They're no mugs either. So, I don't want to go against Bournemouth. But right now, with the news that is coming out of the camp over the past couple of days, I don't really, really want to be with them. But like you said, I'm massively hot on them this season. So I'll be with them a fair few match days, I think. Just not match day one.
The one thing that I will say about Nottingham Forest, and one of the reasons, if unfortunately it looks like there's another points deduction coming for them. Otherwise, they're 8-1 to finish in the top half, which I think is actually kind of interesting in terms of this match. Now that Solanke and Unal are not going to be there, we know that Nottingham Forest was a really, really good, defensive block type team. And even from the point in which Nuno took over on December 20th, they actually had a plus 4.3 expected goal differential, which was 7th best in the Premier League. Now, Bournemouth over that exact same time period had about, the same exact expected goal differential. So with no real striker up top, and we know how good Nottingham Forest is defending in a low defensive block, I think there is maybe a case to be made for Nottingham Forest here, just because of what Bournemouth is lacking up front. I think there maybe is also a case to be made for the under. Potentially as well, now that Bournemouth doesn't really have a striker up top. So for me, those would be the two ways that I lean. We'll see when it comes to match time of what what the line looks like now that Solanke's not there. But hey, Nottingham Forest is coming into the year with 0 injuries. They're consistently have been a team that has really battled injuries. Taiwo Awoniyi, who is their best striker, has missed a ton of time ever since arriving at Nottingham Forest. Like Sam said, they're way better at the City ground than they are anywhere else. So I don't know. I think there is potentially a case to be made now that Solanke is gone, that Nottingham Forest maybe is a little bit undervalued. So, but for me, I'm just going to pass on this first match.
All right, I got nothing here between West Ham and Villa. It's a true pick'em, plus 160 each on the three-way line. The draw's plus 250. A ton of turnover with Lopetegui coming in for Moyes, and he's bringing in a bunch of recruits. I think there's some upside to West Ham, but as we were talking about with Brighton, a team that you might want to wait and see. It's going from David Moyes and then bringing in all these new bodies. Like it's just going to be a feeling out period. As for Villa, the expectations are going to be quite high. A team that we think is, right up there with the top 6 in the Premier League, but on the road, match week 1, it's just not an appealing price. I've got some other bets I'd rather bet on this board, Sam. So easy pass for me.
Same, Michael. Yeah, the bookmakers can't tear them apart, and I'm not really that interested in doing so myself. West Ham recruited really well. Like you said, Crescentia Somerville was the best player in the Championship last season. He's gone to West Ham. Nicholas Fulkrug, which I'm very, very excited by. He'll be leading the line at centre forward. I am intrigued to see how he's going to do this season. Proper centre forward. That's going to be a bit of fun. Max Kilman's come in 40 million. They've spent a bit of money, so it's exciting times to be a West Ham fan. And it's exactly the same for Aston Villa back in the Champions League. They've brought in Amadou Onana from Everton, Ian Matson from Chelsea, both for big money. Ross Barkley comes into the squad, and Jadon Philogene as well, who dazzled in the Championship last season. So things are looking very bright in that part of the world under a top-class coach. From a betting perspective, yeah, this is one, again, that I'm just going to sit back and watch. Too many question marks around West Ham. How good will they be? We're not too sure. Maybe very, very good. It might take them a little bit of time, but there's enough doubt for me to sit this one out.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. I think this is, I projected this pretty much close to a pick-em, which I think is about right. The one thing that I forgot to mention on our preview podcast, because we didn't really talk about West Ham that much, is that Jared Bowen, in terms of being the top team goal scorer, is the favorite for West Ham, and Fulkrug is second at plus 175. I don't hate a shot on Fulkrug at plus 175 to be the team's top goal scorer. Like, if you remember last year, Jared Bowen started up top because quite frankly, they just didn't have a striker, and now they do. The thing is again, like Michael said, going from David Moyes to Lopetegui is going to take some time in terms of feeling out. I think it's the right move for West Ham. Lopetegui is kind of like, he's kind of like Unai Emery in the sense. I mean, they both were Sevilla managers. But in the aspect of the personnel that they have with, Paqueta and Kudus and now Fulkrug and all of these great ball possession guys, it probably is better to try and control matches and build out of the back than just force all of these players and fit, square pegs and round holes and force them just to defend in a low defensive block. So I think there will be it'll take some time for West Ham to truly get to where they are. And they've got, a pretty difficult opening stretch. They go to Palace in match week 2, and then they're at home against Manchester City, Fulham, Chelsea, Brentford. So it's going to be a tough opening stretch, and we're really going to find out if Lopetegui, who was very average at Wolves, as I would describe him, and they were a team, if you remember, under Lopetegui, a lot of possession in their defensive third, took a lot of shots from outside the box, didn't really create a lot of high quality chances. So with the personnel that he has, they really should be able to do that at West Ham. So I think it's just going to take some time to figure out whether he's, the right manager for the job.
The real question is when the bookmakers will post a market for which team will David Moyes be managing in this Premier League come Christmas time, because I'm going to guess he's we'll see who it is.
Chelsea?
It could be Chelsea. Yeah. We'll see.
Manchester United?
Yeah, I know.
Let's run it back.
Get him back. Get him back in there. All right, we'll flip the page to Sunday morning now. 9 a.m. Eastern kickoff between Brentford and Palace. Brentford at home, plus 135. Lukewarm favorite, Palace plus 190. The draw is plus 240 here. I like the draw. I think that this one has the makings of pretty low event. I know Palace were setting the world on fire going down the stretch. BJ talked a lot about Brentford being more unlucky than bad last season. I think that is fair. But this looks like a match between two pretty even teams, two teams that I don't think are going to be able to cause much separation and keep the draw in play throughout the match. So that's what you're looking for when you're betting a draw. The 0-0 at 12-1 is also interesting for me. So I'm looking at that. I'll be on the draw, maybe split the stake with the 0-0 here. But this is my my lone draw of match week 1, BJ. So anything here before we move on to Monday Night Football?
No, I think the odds are pretty correct. I don't hate the play on a draw. if I'm remembering correctly, I believe 3 of the last 4 matches between Brentford and Crystal Palace have ended in a 1-1 draw. So if you want to play exact score 1-1, it might not be a bad play. But yeah, I think this is tough, right? Because these are 2 teams that I know as a podcast we're both very high on. Glasner versus Thomas Frank. You're going to see Thomas Frank sitting at 3.52. The question mark is, can Glasner break him down now that they don't have Olise available? It looks like Czech Decore is going to take a few weeks to actually get back into the squad, so Crystal Palace is not going to have him available. Who knows, by the time we record this, Mark Gahey could be off to Newcastle. So, yeah, I think that this line is about correct. I think Brentford should be just a very slight favorite, so I'm just going to pass.
Okay. That brings us to Monday Night Football. Leicester City and Tottenham. Leicester back in the Premier League. They are plus 425 at home. Spurs traveling minus 167, and the draw here is sitting at 3-1. Not too much here. I do think that this one also it feels like a poor man's version of the Liverpool Ipswich match, where I think there's probably some goals in this between these 2 sides. I like Steve Cooper as a manager. I think that he's actually pretty good. I feel like he's a good big picture guy and kind of understands the situation, and he'll know the situation that Leicester is dealing with here, which is the imminent points deduction. That said, so I actually kind of think that they maybe have a slightly better chance of staying up, depending on just how severe the punishment is than the market suggests. That said, I don't know if they'll be able to stop this Tottenham attack. Sam, I know you're pretty hot in Spurs and their chances to cause a little bit of a ruckus in the table this season. So are you looking at them getting off to a flyer under the lights on Monday Night Football?
Yes, I am. I went for them top 4 in the season preview. If you've not listened, Tottenham were the most profitable team to bet on last season for goals. If you placed a flat 1 unit stake on over 2.5 goals over their 38 games, it would have returned a 16.8% ROI at the prices. So 30 of Tottenham's 38 Premier League games went over 2.5 goals. So if you like Tottenham here and you think they're a little bit short, you can couple up a Tottenham win with over 2.5 goals and you can get a plus 110 price, which I thought was pretty good. I asked the question on the season preview of where do the goals come from for Leicester. I can't see a consistent avenue in terms of a clinical goal scorer. Both of the lads mentioned Jamie Vardy, but he is unfortunately nearing the end of his career, I think, so we're going to have to overlook him. If over 2.5 goals does arrive, which the bookmakers believe it will at minus 200, then Spurs should get the main bulk of the goal scoring opportunities. However, Tottenham did concede 63.4 expected goals against last term. That was the 7th most in the league. So if the Foxes do go behind, they might be afforded the chances to close the deficit. They should be afforded 1 or 2 pretty decent goal scoring chances at home, I think. And if they don't, the market we've sided on here means that Spurs can win 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. And in the event of a whitewash, this selection will cash quite comfortably. Dominic Solanke looks like he's off to Spurs, as we've mentioned. He might be in line for a start here. That will give everyone a big lift. A £65 million striker through the door. Overall, on the main markets, from a betting stance, there's no prices I really like. There's none that jumped out in front of me. But in terms of a same game parlay at plus money, Spurs win over 2.5 goals. That's where I ended up.
BJ, anything to add?
No, I will say that this match for Spurs last season against Steve Cooper got him fired. It was the final because Nuno took over on December 20th and December 15th. Spurs beat Nottingham Forest 2-0. The XG was very close, and that was kind of the story of Nottingham Forest to begin the season last year, and it got Steve Cooper fired. But I think, Michael, to your point, I think Steve Cooper is like the new modern version of like the Sam Allardyce's, Sean Dyche's of the world, where he's just always going to be put in a really bad position, and he's really good at managing players and in navigating those tough waters. Again, I think this is a situation kind of similar to, Brighton, where it's like, hey, we're taking Leicester going from a completely different style of play to Steve Cooper's 3-5-2 low block.
I just kind of want to see what it looks like, honestly. They may become a team to actually bet on. I think the market will be very low on them as we get throughout the season. But here in the first match, I think it's, for me, I'm just going to pass, which sucks because I love betting on Monday Night Football, but I don't think I can do it.
Okay. That's the Premier League done and dusted. There are a couple other matches in Europe to get to. BJ, yeah, you can take us through here.
Yeah, Serie A, Napoli minus 110 against Lecce. I think a price very, very short here. Antonio Conte coming into Napoli. Did some good business. Bargiano coming over from Torino really solidifies their center back pairing. Victor Osimhen is still there. Kvaratskhelia is still there. This is a Napoli team that severely underperformed last season. Finished 9th in Serie A, 10th, but had a plus 23 expected goal differential, which was 3rd best in the league. They're a team that really should positively progress now that they have one of the best managers at the helm. Lecce was a really bad defensive team. They just lost their best center back to Fiorentina. They did bring in, and I know this name's going to sound fake, but it's real, Luca Gotti is their manager. He took over in March. They did have some improvements under him, but again, this is a team that really lacks talent level comparatively to what Napoli is. And quite frankly, I just think minus 10 is way too short. In terms of La Liga, I like Atletico Madrid on Monday against Villarreal. Villarreal last season was one of the worst defensive teams in La Liga, dead last in final third of box entry conversion rate. They got in way too many transitional battles with teams in the lower half of the table. And really the reason that they were able to kind of, stay in terms of the middle of the table was because their striker, Alexander Sorloth, scored 23 goals and really overperformed for this season. Well, he's on the other end of the pitch now because he's at Atletico Madrid, and they didn't really bring in a capable replacement for him. So losing their best striker, I think, is a bad situation for Villarreal. And I think, and obviously Atletico Madrid has done a lot of good business this summer. Not only Sorloth, but obviously bringing in Julian Alvarez, Lemut Normad from Real Sociedad is another really good signing. So I think Atletico Madrid is in a really good spot here. So I really, really like them at plus 135. And for everybody out there, just a quick announcement. Now that we have Sam on the podcast, Sam is a big championship guy, if you don't know. We're going to replace the Ligue 1 section with the championship this season. Just don't think Ligue 1 is that interesting. I don't even know if they have a TV deal yet in the United States here. And if you don't know, Paramount Plus is getting 12 EFL matches per week. So you're going to be able to see a lot more championship matches in the United States. And Sam is really good at handicapping the championship. We're not going to do it this week because we are recording on Friday, August 9th, before the first week. So we don't want to, look a week ahead, essentially, or make him handicap something off something that we haven't even seen yet. But going forward, we will be doing a section on the championship over Ligue 1.
Yeah, exciting stuff, especially with Wayne Rooney
That's
navigating the waters there for Sam's Plymouth Argyle. All right, we'll get into the closing sections of our show, Underdog Parlay and Best Bet. But before we do, a reminder that Wondergoal is proudly presented by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than anyone else. Every day, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, North Carolina, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. If you or anyone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. Okay, our first Underdog Parlay of the season, 3 legs. The rules are these teams must be plus 200 or longer to win their match in the coming weekend. BJ, you can get us started.
Yeah, let's go to La Liga. Alaves 3-1 against Celta Vigo, a price that I think should be closer to around being a pick'em. Celta Vigo did improve once Rafa Benitez left, but again, like we already mentioned with Wolves, Jorgen Strand-Larsen is off to Wolves, their best striker. Also, they faced Alaves towards the end of last season, and Alaves destroyed them 3-0, won on XG 2.3 to 0.2. It's an Alaves team that, yes, is losing Omidarian, who was on loan there last season, but he didn't play in that match against Celta Vigo, and they have a 34-year-old striker named Kike who put up pretty much the exact same XG per 90 numbers as Mkhitaryan. So I don't see this Alaves team, who was one of the best defensive teams in La Liga last season, really dropping off at all. I mean, they were around an even expected goal differential and towards the top half of the table in terms of underlying metrics. So don't think they should be an underdog here. So I like Alaves at 3-1.
I'm going to go with Chelsea, Sunday, 11:30 a.m. I just think the talent is there that you want to back Chelsea when they're big prices, and you want to stay very far away from them when they are big favorites. Hopefully catch City in a little bit of a sleepy spot. They've been slow starters under Pep the past couple of seasons, taking the first half to kind of stalk the pace, and maybe we catch them here on the road at Stamford Bridge. So Chelsea plus 333 for me, Sam.
Very brave, Michael. I'm going against the other side of Manchester, so we're not going to be too well liked up north of England. Fulham plus 500. Palhinha-less Fulham head to Old Trafford. They'll probably find it difficult on the opening day. I don't doubt that, but I don't think they should be plus 500 for the win. It feels big, and it feels like a price that suggests Man United should have it all their own way, which they won't. This ended 2-1 to Fulham in Manchester last time they met. Fulham were 4-1 that day. Now they're 5-1 to win this game after beating them in February. The fear factor at Old Trafford is dwindling, and if United aren't at their best, Fulham have the components in their squad to capitalise. So Fulham plus 500.
Okay. Alaves, Chelsea, Fulham to get us started. 103-1 if those three come through. Best bets now for the Premier League match week 1. Get the season started off, hopefully. This section remains as profitable as it has the past few. BJ, what do you got?
Arsenal, Wolves, both teams to score no at minus 130. Wolves is going to be without Matheus Cunha. Pedro Neto is off to Chelsea, which really limits them in terms of their attack. And quite frankly, going up against Arsenal, no real team in the bottom half of the table has been able to do much damage against them. Last season, only 5 opponents created more than 1 non-penalty expected goal against Arsenal. The reason they're so good is because they're elite at defending in transition. They start 4 center backs. They're good at defending set pieces, and their high press has been as effective as any team in the world. So it's very, very difficult for teams to actually play through them. And Wolves saw that in both meetings last season, only created a total of 1 expected goal against them over their 2 meetings. Arsenal does have some question marks in terms of how they're going to score from open play. Wolves, as we saw last season, is a very well-drilled side in terms of defending their penalty area. Number 1 in the Premier League in terms of blocking shots and defending crosses. They're also very good at defending set pieces. So I think we're going to see a very low-scoring game here. And I really have question marks about whether Wolves is actually going to be able to create anything of value. So I like both teams to score no at minus 130.
I'm going to stick with Bournemouth on the money line at plus 170. I think the number will grow, so you can be patient here with the Dominic Solanke news. I think that the gap between Forest and Bournemouth is wide enough in terms of talent that I'm okay with them being a slight underdog on the road at the City Ground, where Forest have been pretty good. But I want to get in on this Bournemouth team. I think the prices are only going to be going in one direction, so might as well start the season off backing them as an underdog against a Forest team that I think is a couple tiers below them, just in terms of overall talent. Sam, you can take us home.
I'm going for Newcastle minus 0.5 first half Asian handicap at minus 121 against Southampton. I feel like this might be a rude awakening for Southampton and Russell Martin after coming up through the playoffs in the Championship. Newcastle will be all over them like a rash from minute 1. No time on the ball, limiting their build-up from the back and their want to knock it around, which are the principles of a Russell Martin-led Southampton. The home side will pounce on any loose balls and early mistakes in attempt to make their opponents pay. Last season, Newcastle scored 8 goals in the first 15 minutes of play from 19 home games. That was the most in the division. So an early goal here, and I think it could be a long day for the Premier League's newest club.
Perfect. That does it for match week 1. For BJ and Sam, I'm Michael. Thank you to our sponsors, Bet365. Thank you to our producer, Noah, for all the hard work on the back end. Thank you to everyone who's back for another season of Wondergoal. Hopefully you enjoyed our season preview episodes, but you're going to be hearing a lot more from us over the next few months, so get used to it, and hopefully things go well for us again on this podcast.